All right, welcome back to the Elias Macko Show, third hour of the program. Let's talk a little bit about the provincial budget, which was, of course, unveiled by Finance Minister Eric Girard yesterday. Some of the tidbits from that budget: the deficit projected to go down by nearly $4 billion. It's set for $8.6 billion for the 26-27 fiscal year. Some other highlights of the budget: $5 billion increase in infrastructure investments over the next 6 years, and over $580 million over 5 years to support small and medium-sized businesses. That last little tidbit will be a particular focus for our next guest. Véronique Proulx joins us, President and CEO of the Fédération des Chambres de commerce du Québec, Quebec's Chambers of Commerce, on the line. Madame Proulx, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So let's ask you about the small and medium-sized business money in the budget. How do you view that?
Well, the first thing I would say is that the budget that was presented yesterday, the measures for the companies are really not at the level that we needed, considering the challenges that small and medium companies are encountering across Quebec. Why? Because it's really a budget that's in the continuity of what has been done in the past, whereas we're going through a huge crisis, economical crisis, with the tariff war, with the war in Middle East. There's a lot of challenges for SMEs. And we were expecting more ambitious measures to support them in the current context. And for example, when we talk about the context, if you look at investment, we can see that private investment has gone down. And when we speak to business owners, they tell us, I'm not sure I'm going to invest. I'm going to wait. Why? Because I don't know what's going to happen with the tariffs. Prices of oil are going up. How is that going to impact me? So the economy is really on pause. We've seen a lot of companies that are losing market shares in the U.S. because of the tariff wars, or they're losing customers. And the third impact that we see is labor shortages. So again, today, a lot of companies still can't have access to the workers they need.
So you said you were hoping for things that were more ambitious. Why don't you define ambitious for our listeners here? What does that mean?
Yeah. Absolutely. So what we had asked for was for to reduce the tax burden for companies, reduce the tax burden, reduce red tape, and reduce regulations to make the business environment more friendly. And what the government did yesterday was quite the opposite. So they added more or less $500 million to support SME, small and medium companies, and the different regions of Quebec, which really doesn't have a big impact when you roll that out over 5 years. And they're kind of sprinkling the money on different initiatives, different programs. So it won't have impact on the decisions to invest in Quebec, or for companies to incentivize companies to invest now in Quebec in the current context. So once again, what we were asking for is reduce the tax burden, so for companies to pay less tax, but cut on the programs, cut on other tax credits, and really make sure that you give more breathing room to companies.
So let me ask you about those investments, right, that you say the businesses here are holding off on.
Yeah.
I wonder if you're also hearing from those same businesses that operate on both sides of the Canada-U.S. border, if they're also doing the same type of pause in the U.S. And if you're seeing decisions being made where they're saying, it's full steam ahead south of the border, but here at home in Canada, we've got to tap the brakes.
So, interesting question. There are companies who have chosen since the beginning of the tariff war to invest in the U.S., either develop new plants or transfer some of their production to the U.S. because they want to maintain their market access to the U.S. market, and we can understand because the U.S. market is a huge market. But however, when we speak with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, so our counterpart in the U.S., when we speak with representatives from the Senate, from the Congress in the U.S., or businesses, everybody's telling us that the uncertainty is, of course, hurting Quebec companies, Canadian companies, but also U.S. companies who are putting on hold their investment. So it's really impacting companies on both sides of the border.
Now, you mentioned that you had hopes, the cutting of taxes here in Quebec. One of the things that I've heard time and time again is that what's happening in the U.S. right now, while you ask for it here, in the U.S., they're doing it. They are reducing taxes and they're reducing red tape regulation. Let's talk about that aspect here. How devastating is it if on either side of the border, there's a very different strategy on how you deal with taxing and regulating?
Well, we're very close to the U.S. market. So what the U.S. decides to do in terms of commercial policy or in terms of their business environment will have an impact on us because companies are so close to the U.S. border, it's going to influence their investment decisions. And it has been doing so for many years now. And we can see that there's a lot of more Canadian investment done in the U.S. and U.S. investment in Canada. So we're losing on our manufacturing footprint. We're losing on different sectors because the more the U.S. is aggressive on tax measures, on the business environment, and the more they put protectionist barriers, the more Quebec and Canadian companies are tempted to invest on the other side of the border. So I'll go back to our companies just for a sec, because one of the questions that I asked my members, we have companies, we have the chambers, but we also have private companies, over 1,000 companies in various regions of Quebec that operate there. And I've been asking them, in the context where our government does, they don't have any more money, we have huge deficits, how are you expecting them to support you? And the message is really clear. They say, get out of the way. Tell the government to get out of the way, to let us invest, to trust us that we will invest and develop the economy. But to do so, once again, reduce the tax burden and reduce the red tape. We need more breathing space if we want to be able to invest.
You must be banging your head against the wall, because this is clearly not the strategy here in Quebec, and especially in Ottawa. The federal mantra is not getting out of the way. It's more and more involvement here. We're wrapping up here with Véronique Proulx, who is the president and CEO of the Quebec Federation of Chambers of Commerce. One last thing I need to ask you about, Madame Proulx. You're president and CEO. I need to ask you about other political reaction from Quebec political parties, more specifically Charles Milliard and the Liberals. Charles Milliard used to have your gig. So I wonder how you view that. And do you think someone who was in your role previously really understands the issues you're talking about?
Really good question. So we're meeting Charles next Monday with a group of companies. We're welcoming him with over 100 companies. So we'll have the chance to have that conversation. But I will say that although this, the government didn't go forward with the recommendations we have for this budget, there are elections coming up, and we're looking forward to pushing our recommendation to all parties to make sure that we can have a business environment that is more friendly for companies in all regions of Quebec.
Are any parties more receptive than others? Is that something you're comfortable talking about, or you try and stay out of that side of things?
If they are more receptive?
Yeah.
They're receptive to certain elements in the recommendations that we're making. So, for instance, I'll go to an extent, Québec solidaire is very much in favor of increasing immigration levels. Le Parti québécois is very much in favor of having a government that is less interventionist. So reducing red tape, reducing the tax burden, less programs, but they're not so much in favor about increasing immigration. So it really varies from one party to another.
It's so interesting. Like, what a new Parti Québécois when they're in favor of getting rid of some of the measures, right?
Exactly.
All right, Madame Proulx, we have to leave it there. Fascinating discussion. Come back, okay?
Thank you so much.
That's Véronique Proulx is the president and CEO of the Quebec Federation of Chambers of Commerce.
iHeartRadio is throwing it back.
2010s, the decade.
To the days of huge hits and unforgettable anthems. A non-stop stream of the biggest and best.
Drake, Rihanna, Beyonce, Katy, Gaga, The Weeknd,
and more. All your decade-defining favorites, all in one place.
Hi, it's Katy Perry.
Hey, it's Bruno Mars.
This is Kesha.
Find 2010's The Decade on the free iHeartRadio app. Preset the station so it's always one tap away.